No, no, no. Look. You're missing it. This is the craziest part of the movie. This is the craziest part. Watch. Look. Oh my God. Like, why? I'm just like, why is she doing that? Welcome to a very special episode of Film Rec Friday. Why is today's episode so special? Because today we've got our very first double feature. Experimental pseudo-documentary double feature. Hollis Frampton will burn a picture. Hey, that actually worked out. Today we'll be discussing Eric Baudelaire's Sick and Hollis Frampton's Nostalgia.
But you ought to thank me before I for the gravel in your and the spit in your because I'm the that named you.
Sick is a 15-minute film from 2009 directed by French-American director Eric Baudelaire. The film takes place in a bookstore in Kyoto and follows the daily work of the person in charge of censoring the art and photography books that come through the store. There's no dialogue, no real story, just a woman with a little razor tool and a feather brush to wipe away the crumbs of someone's hard-earned quintessence. The film is not a documentary because what we are seeing is an exaggerated version of a real process called bokashi, the exaggeration being in the idea that the censorship is extending beyond what would typically be expected, such as pornographic images, going so far as to censor the horizon line in a black and white landscape photo. The reality of this film is in fact heightened, but it's filmed so naturally that you might not see it. Case in point, the first time I watched this, I was fully deceived into thinking it was real, which is partially attributed to ignorance of the Northern Hemisphere, but it's also a testament to the film's effectiveness, because your mind automatically fills in an explanation for why the image is being censored. When she censors the day or the month out of a date, you automatically assume that something happened that day. Something political, probably. Whereas if she hadn't censored it, you might not have thought twice about it. On his website, Baudelaire talks about the use of bokashi in his installation piece from the same year of Signs and Sense, and the paradox inherent in the act. What remains on the scratched page isn't necessarily less evocative of desire. The erotic charge of an image may even be emphasized by the partial absence of the human figure. Baudelaire was more specifically talking about images of the human body, but I think it applies equally as well to the other less obvious images. When you censor words that I, being unable to read Japanese, can't understand, only then do I deeply want to know what the words say, thus making me more likely to seek out the uncensored version, or worse, not do any research and jump to my own conclusions, because paradoxes do not come without danger. Another way this illustration is incredibly useful is that it reveals the political potential in all art. Is this landscape photo political? I don't know, but look how easily it becomes political. It's a bit of a stretch, but I think this film almost qualifies as a piece of performance art. It's provocative in the sense that we're seeing art being defaced without a whole lot of explanation right before our eyes. And there's a call to action in the way the overzealous censorship doesn't actually feel that hyperbolic. Would a bookstore actually go through the trouble of scratching out the sex organs of flowers? Probably not. But are the paintings of Georgia O'Keeffe still highly controversial to this day? You bet your sweet calla lilies they are, and it compels you to look at what is being censored all around you. Why some things and not other things? How could you take something and hide or distort its meaning with the swipe of a blade? Is it even effective? Do you not still get the gist of what the I say when I bleep myself? Am I putting unintended in my mouth? creating a new meaning? Did I, the censor, contribute to the art? Or did I even potentially create my own work of art? Can you create art by destroying it? Well,
there are places I remember all my life.
Hapax Legomena is a trilogy of experimental films by structuralist trailblazer and all-around sexual powerhouse Hollis Frampton. Nostalgia, being the first entry of the series, came out in 1971 and has a runtime of 36 minutes. The film consists of a series of photo negatives taken by the director, burning to a crisp over a hot plate as the narrator explains the backstory behind each one. The catch, however, is that the audio is always one track ahead of the picture. So every photo he's describing in the present is the one you know you'll be seeing next.
This photograph of two toilets was made in February of 1964. A painter friend asked me to make a photographic document of spaghetti.
It creates this really hypnotizing effect where you're forced to sit with both anticipation and reminiscence at the same time. You eagerly await the next image while also trying to remember what was said about the current one. This effect is achieved through the ultimate act of censorship, erasing a work of art from existence entirely. These photos were once physical items you could hold in your hand, and now they only exist in this film. And this isn't the form of censorship that we've all learned to despise. This isn't some act of corporate sanitization. This is an artist doing with his art what he is entitled to. That is to say, whatever the he wants. Am I then going to say that Banksy destroying Girl with Balloon is also an act of censorship? Well, I'm not really trying to say that either of these pieces of art, and Sick by extension, are themselves acts of censorship. But these pieces of art use the language of censorship to actually create an even more solid infrastructure for their art's longevity. Let's be honest, Girl with Balloon would not be nearly as talked about today if it wasn't for its transformation into Love is in the Bin. Hollis Frampton's black and white photograph of moldy spaghetti might have never been seen by 21st century eyes if it wasn't for nostalgia. And the beautiful thing about both these pieces, being Nostalgia and Girl with a Balloon / Love is in the Bin, while the physical works of art as we knew them are gone from their physical existence, they still exist. Girl with Balloon still has its own separate Wikipedia page. Frampton's moldy spaghetti is still accurately recreated by the pixels on my screen. They have simply been repurposed by way of destruction into something new and potentially more impactful.
I take some comfort in realizing that my entire physical body has been replaced more than once since it made this portrait of its face. However, I understand that my central nervous system is an exception.
My takeaway from these films is that censorship is still bad. I'm in no way making an argument for censoring or destroying art. It's an especially sensitive topic right now. I'm aware that the UK just passed laws that put age locks on pretty much the entire internet, blocking millions of British youths from that which may corrupt their developing minds, such as access to info about bodily hygiene, information about safe sex and consent, information about drug and alcohol abuse. And unfortunately, it's kind of looking like the US is intrigued by this idea of a youth culture that doesn't know anything. I wonder why that is. And you might be thinking that this doesn't apply to the censorship of art, but I think it very much does. Because need I remind you, the Trojan horse here is that it's an attempt to crack down on porn. Am I saying that porn is art? No comment. But I think we can at least agree that it is a form of entertainment. And what that tells me is that they'll always use boundary pushing art or entertainment as a straw man for what they're actually scared of. You and your big brain that questions things in search for the truth. It's almost like the truth isn't in their favor.
You starting to see what I'm saying?
But while we can all agree that censorship is bad, it is something that we have to deal with. And I take a lot of hope from these two films because they prove its ineffectiveness. They make absolute theater of its irony. If you try to erase a piece of art, be careful, you might accidentally immortalize it. And these films also give us, as artists, the tools with which to observe, dismantle, and subvert the language of censorship to our advantage. This is a photograph of President Donald standing next to notorious child Jeffrey. It is one of multiple times they were photographed together. Apparently they were quite good friends, and you can tell by the body language there seems to be sort of a mutual trust between the two. I see you, they seem to say to each other. I'll protect you.